Texas City, April 16, 1947. The bay is still as glass. The water is so smooth that the tall cranes on the pier look like they are stuck upside down into a second sky. The first sunlight tiptoes across rows of wooden crates that act like giant Lego bricks. The lazy morning whistle stretches over corrugated roofs, slides into the windows of a temporary classroom set up in a warehouse, and brushes the salt and pepper hair of a watch repairman turning a tiny crown on a dial. He pauses for a heartbeat, wondering if he should slow it down one notch, then decides not to. Everything is still on time. On the deck of the SS Grand Camp, a bead of sweat drops onto the hot steel and vanishes as if it never existed. A worker stops short because of a strange smell, a sweet note that clings to the back of the throat, not oil and not sea salt. From a gap in the hatch of hold number 4, a strand of white smoke as thin as silk curls upward. It is probably fine, someone says loudly enough to calm himself. The smoke is thin, white, gentle like the steam of a morning cup of tea, so familiar that it tricks the instinct that should have warned them. In the temporary classroom, kids crowd the window, their eyes round like chalk circles. Look over there, one of them points. Outside, the newsman hands the morning headline with letters stacked as evenly as bricks. At the corner, a young mother soothes her child. Hush, listen to the whistle. She looks up at the thread of smoke, then bends to pull the child's knitcap straight. An old man walks past the station carrying a worn wooden picture frame. His steps are slow and steady, the way they are every morning. The whole town moves by small motions that trust today will be the same as yesterday on the deck. The hatch trembles like a chest about to cough. A thin squeal comes from the valve, metal grinding on metal like someone pressing a piece of chalk to hard across a blackboard. The smoke is still pretty, still thin. A second whistle drifts across the bay, unhurried, allowing shoulders to drop. No one guesses that in a few minutes that familiar sound will change its job, from wake-up call to memory, like a clean blade. This is not a war. This is Texas City, April 16, 1947, the day people learned that the thing that makes soil bloom can also change the color of the sky. This is hidden history. Follow so that lessons paid for at a high price do not get buried again. The wind shifts. The thread of smoke leans toward the shore and brushes a mooring line stretched tight like the neck tendon of someone holding his breath. Below deck, a small metallic knock hits something and goes quiet. A sailor lays his palm on the steel plate, jerks back from the heat, then gives a quick laugh to cover the unease. On the other side of the pier, the Highfly lies still, a ship big as a giant resting on one side, as if listening. The smoke keeps drifting, and a clock without hands begins to count down. The white smoke like milk seeps again from hold number 4. Lewis, his hands dark with oil in the nail beds, bends close and breathes in very lightly. The sweet, acrid note sticks in his throat. "Boss, this smell is odd," he says. The supervisor squints at the smoke and flicks his hand. "Close the hatch. Pump steam inside." He turns away as if he has stamped the issue handled. The valve spins with the scrape of metal on metal. The hatch shuts, and the whole ship seems to hold its breath. The narrator slips in like a technical footnote. Ammonium nitrate is stable when kept cool and ventilated. In a confined space, rising heat makes it recrystallize and feed oxygen to its own reaction. Steam does not always smother it. Sometimes steam tucks it in. Bags labeled ammonium nitrate are stacked into a wall. Young sunlight rests on the tops, seeps into the threads, and pushes the heat down into the deck. Lewis puts his palm on the steel, burns, and pulls back, leaving a faint red patch on his skin. "Temperature is rising fast," he murmurs. Across the deck, a sailor flicks his cigarette overboard because a no open flame sign is right in front of him, and he laughs weakly. "Relax. It is fertilizer, not gunpowder." The choke hits the deck like a loose bolt slipping from a pocket. Point of view 1. The schoolboy. He presses his back to the warehouse wall and follows the white smoke with his eyes like a pencil line in the sky. "Is it going to blow?" he asks his friend, half a joke and half not. His friend frowns. "Blow what? It is only smoke." Point of view 2. The young mother. She straightens her child's headscarf. "Do you hear the whistle?" "I hear it." She looks up. Do you see that smoke? It is pretty white. She presses her lips together. Pretty is not always peaceful. A dry pop. The hatch lifts a fraction and settles. Every eye locks on the seam. The supervisor cups his hands and signals for more steam. The hiss grows longer and sharper. The deck shivers just a little. Enough for those already on alert to feel and those longing for calm to miss. Lewis grabs the speaking tube. Cold for smoke is thickening. Sweet burnt smell. Quick rise in heat. The line comes back with static. Stay calm. Follow procedure. Keep it sealed. The word procedure sounds solid as steel, and sometimes it is just wood. The wind pushes smoke toward the shore. A girl taps the classroom window. Clouds. The young mother rests her head on her husband's shoulder, as if asking but not wanting an answer. The watch repairman places his pocket watch on the table and turns the crown slowly one notch. Not because the time is wrong, but because his heart is suddenly fast. The morning shift whistle drifts long, and the pier loosens for half a beat. Then the rim of smoke at the hatch mouth warms to a faint yolk orange, as if an egg yolk is being stirred very slowly. Carbon dioxide. Someone shouts. The pin pops. The white blast sprays the edge of the hatch and disappears, like water poured into heated sand. Hot air slaps back and makes the man with the extinguisher squint. Lewis steps back half a pace until the steel coaming catches his heel. Lewis glances at the high flyer. The mooring lines are tight like a throat tendon. The space between the two hulls is shorter than a single sigh. On the shore, the crowd thickens. The schoolboy tucks himself deeper behind the wall. A second pop, bigger, kicks the hatch up and drops it hard, like a knock from the far side of a door. A thin whistle slices the air. Above the hatch, a small patch of blue sky begins to dull the place where the smoke changes color for the third time. The clock without hands keeps counting. At the center of the smoke ring, a thin needle of flame appears, trembling like a visible pulse. Clear the deck, Lewis yells. The carbon dioxide jet hits the smoke clip and disappears, swallowed. The hatch will not budge. Unseen pressure pins it shut. The supervisor opens his mouth, then closes it, swallowing hot air. Silence holds for one breath. Then the sky bends. A white flash claws across their vision, and an invisible giant hand shoves every chest at once. Lewis slams to the deck, spine first. His ears fill with a heavy hum. The shockwave flattens the air and yanks it back like an angry tide. A steel crane bows like a reed. Windows burst across town. A sheet of roofing air fellies and slices at drugs to a sign, leaving the word rugs. Nora folds forward on the steps as a porch roof drops across her back at an angle, her arms still locked around the child. Her husband crawls up and calls her name, but hears only wind roaring down a tunnel. At the pier head, a fire truck that had just opened its hose is now a black frame. Helmets lie everywhere. A pair of scorched gloves is fused together like to hands still trying to hold on. Down in the hold, a short column of flame rises and dies, leaving a dark mouth with red still like coal dotted to the fuel yard. A tank cap blows. A carrot-colored jet shoots straight up, then rains gasoline over the bay and spreads a burning carpet. Fire runs like it has legs, chases an oil ribbon, and boxes in a tuck. On the high flyer, the horn groans and the lines strain to breaking. Cut the lines, the officer shouts, his voice bouncing off the hull. The axe falls. The rope splinters. The ship lurches a few feet. Every foot is a breath one back. Montage. A young pharmacist clutching bandages, mouth dry as dust. The watch repairman pressing a palm over a fallen clock face. The minute hand bent. The gate guard with cracked lips, blowing a whistle on the last half of his breath. A man lifts a warped bell, maybe from the missing fire engine, and strikes a steel post with a wrench. The note that bursts out is split and crooked, but it travels far. It threads through smoke, slides over hot roofs, and squeezes between broken walls. Nora lifts her head toward the sound and finds her breathing. Follow the bell, Lewis tells the schoolboy. They slip through a narrow slot between two piles of brick and dash across a yard glittering with shards like coarse salt. A radio at City Hall growls where the knob is twisted to hard. Texas City requests all assistance. Hospitals overwhelmed. Temporary morgues being set up. Static chews the words like gravel. Headlights crawling from every direction, small and stubborn. At a staging area, cause passes from soot-black hands to blood-red hands without names. Nora leans on a post with the child asleep again. The schoolboy breathes through his nose as told. Lewis catches his reflection in a broken pane, a soot-black face, red eyes, and the column of smoke behind him. The first question has been answered with fire. The next question rises like a nail lifting from a wooden floor. How many can be saved before night? The train station opens its eyes in a different shape, a hospital built out of whatever is at hand. Wooden tables are dragged into rows. White sheets are thrown on in a hurry. Enamel basins clatter in a rhythm that feels like it could run forever. The air smells of iodine, smoke, sweat, and a little burnt sugar from a candy cart flipped outside on the street. Nora sits on the floor with her back against a post, her arms wrapped around her child who has finally stopped gulping for breath. Her hair is pasted down by ash and steam. Lewis guides the schoolboy to a table edge. A young nurse whose sleeves are too long for her arms counts softly as she wraps the bandage. 1, 2, 3. On the brick wall, someone props a blackboard and begins to write names. The chalk line trembles like a knee trying to lock. A row of ownerless shoes lines up under the tables. Leather shoes, rubber boots, canvas school shoes. The toes are still warm. A volunteer picks up a warped fireman's helmet and places it neatly beside a bucket. The silver-haired watch repairman rinses an ash-streaked shard of glass in a steel basin and speaks to no one at all. Do not let grit into the axle. Do not let grit into the axle. Beside the blackboard, the reader calls out each written name and presses the chalk harder with every syllable. If anyone knows this person, raise your hand. A wrinkled hand rises. A quiet yes that is smaller than a breath settles the question dot in the corner. The civil defense officer reads with a rough voice. For now, we confirm hundreds. After review, at least 581 dead, and more than 5,000 injured. The numbers fall straight to the floor and do not bounce. Outside, more than 1/3 of the industrial district looks erased. Tank lids blown clean off. Girders bowed like heads. Rails snapped like ribs. Someone pins a handwritten sheet to a post. Water. Towels, nurse, arrow to the right. The letters grow thicker. The arrow grows longer. A habit that is born in an hour already knows how to point the way. Afternoon tips into night without needing a sunset. The sky is red with fire. The wind changes its mind again and again the way a feverish body kicks the sheets. The high flyer groans through the hours. Every secondary blast punches a new iron dot into the city map. Every dot is a muted cry inside the station. Nora dozes for a minute and her head slides to one side. A slice of light cuts across the window. The high flyer explodes. The ground jumps a notch. Shelves fall like a run of dominoes. The last small panes burst into a tiny storm of ice. The child flinches, then sinks back down, drained completely. Lewis throws his shoulder against a half-fallen door and 2 bricks thud against his back and drop to the floor. The narrator's voice is steady. At dawn on April 17th, the second blast tears open what the pier still held together. The second punch clarifies the first. A large sheet goes up next to the names. The word timeline written across the top in pencil. 6 o'clock to 8:30, April 16th. Grantham smoking at hold number 4. Steam pumped into the hold. Around 9 o'clock, the rim of the smoke turns orange. Carbon dioxide fails to change it. Around 9:12, first explosion. Grantham. 9:30 to noon. Chain fires. The fuel depot ignites. High flyer is damaged. Afternoon to night, April 16th. Rescue, transport, scattered fires, calls for assistance. Dawn, April 17th. Second explosion. High flyer. Every mark is a pin pushed into cork. A diagram for a day nobody wants to repeat. Late morning, April 17th. City Hall makes a small room for the meeting. A map of the docks is spread across the table. Red pins sit on the fuel depot, the warehouse, the Grancom's berth, and the high flyer's mooring. Chairs arc into a half circle. A shipping company representative, a harbour policeman, a federal official, a fire officer with stood still on his wrists. The recorder sets pen to paper. Who gave the order to pump steam into the hold? Standard procedure. It has worked on smoke before. What hazard markings were on the cargo bags? Only the words ammonium nitrate. No oxidizer symbol. No explosive warning. What distance separated the ammonium nitrate ship from fuel and sulfur storage? Short. Tight dock. Heavy traffic. Crowd control at the scene. No time. Pretty smoke attracts people. The question's nailed down. The tabletop goes cold. Another blackboard stands by the door. The fire officer writes a chain in white chalk. Hazardous cargo without proper labels means handlers underestimate risk. A sealed hold with injected steam means rising heat, rising pressure, and a cargo that feeds oxygen to itself. Short distance to fuel and sulfur means a chain of fires. Lack of training for chemical ship fires, and no dock evacuation playbook means confusion where there should be drills. A crowd pulled in by safe curiosity means more injuries and more loss. There is no single villain, he says evenly. There are only small decisions out of step. Lewis lets his fingertips find the nicked rim of the warped bell that someone set on the step. An older officer hands him a canteen. You did what you knew. Now we will know better. A borrowed classroom becomes a hall. The ceiling fan clicks in a slow circle. The breeze smells like chalk and the smoke that has settled into the grain of the wood. Across the blackboard someone writes one line in block letters. Change the procedure before the sky changes color. We will write short, clear, and readable in smoke, the coordinator says. The secretary writes large and leaves a bold dash between every rule. 1. Smoke that changes color means alarm. Stop debating at the scene and switch to commands. 2. Hazard labels are mandatory for ammonium nitrate. Use the oxidizer symbol and large letters at the dock gate, the warehouse door, and on the paperwork. 3. No steam injection into a sealed hold that is heating. With this cargo, steam is a blanket that keeps the heat in. 4. Keep minimum separation between an ammonium nitrate ship and fuel or sulfur storage. Draw red boxes on the plans and plant painted posts on the dock. 5. Run specialized training for chemical ship fires and regular evacuation drills, both tabletop and field. Put number 1 at the very top, Lewis says. The person on duty does not have many seconds. The chalk arrow squeaks upward, and the room lets out a breath. On the board the chain is drawn again. Sealed hold. Heat up. Recrystallize. Self-feed oxygen. Overpressure. Explosion. This is where instinct betrays you, the officer says. You see smoke and you want steam to cool it. With ammonium nitrate, steam keeps heat. A 3-line case is pinned on the wall. White smoke. Orange edge. Hot air bouncing back. That equals alarm. A 1-page handout goes around. The top half is the oxidizer symbol. The bottom half is the 5 rules in large bold letters. Post it by the speaking tube, on the warehouse door, on the fire engine, at the gate. Memorize it, or let the paper remind you. Nora tapes a new arrow beneath the words water, towels, nurse, and fixes each point with a nail. People follow it as if it were a fresh chalk line guiding their feet. Lewis smooths a hazard poster on the door and presses the edge flat with his palm. A straight edge is easier to see, he mutters. He hangs the warped bell as a sample and next to it a new bell. His fingertip traces the nick in the old rim. It feels like a note written in metal in the margin of a book. The fax machine rattles at the post office with an urgent notice about ammonium nitrate. The radio in Galveston reads a paragraph that says clearly, do not inject steam into a sealed hot hold, and smoke that changes color means alarm. In Port Arthur, the dockmaster walks the pier with a can of red paint and an old steel ruler, marking new safety boxes on the concrete. A county fire crew builds a cardboard tabletop model. 2 boxes, one with an oxidizer label, one without. Which is more dangerous? By sundown, nobody needs to ask. The dock runs a quick 10-minute drill. 1 horn means stop loading and watch the smoke color. A red flag means keep distance and move the public of the pier. 2 horns means charge water lines and notify the infirmary. 3 horns means evacuate the sulfur yard and the fuel depot and isolate flame sources. Again, the captain says. The crew repeats until hands move before thoughts do, and the red paint on the ground looks like a habit you can see. The bay is flat, but not because the town is carefree. It is flat because people are standing where they should. At the head of the pier, the wooden board stands like a spine. 5 lines are written clearly. The first line is painted thicker than the rest. Smoke that changes color means alarm. Lewis checks valves, latches, and locks. The motions live in muscle more than in thought. His palm rests on the hazard label at eye level. In the station yard, Nora lines up towels, water, and bandages. She tapes a small arrow under the word nurse. The third nail drives deeper than the first 2. The schoolboy comes back with a neat bandage and steadier eyes. Nora hands him a coat with double stitching at the wrists and shoulders and a small pocket for a hard candy. Are you still afraid of the blast? I am more afraid of smoke that changes color. Good, she says. Be afraid of the right thing. A new cargo ship waits outside the channel. The oxidizer symbol on the hull catches the sun. The ship waits for escort, takes 2 horn signals, hoists a small flag, and comes in. The distance that was drawn on paper shows up on the water like a breath you can see between 2 steel bodies. The gate guard moves his arm in a practiced curve. 1 lamppost away. The watch repairman listens to the timing and nods. Under the even new bell hangs beside the warped bell. Lewis strikes the new bell first. The tone is round and full, and it sounds like instruction, not fear. He touches the old bell lightly. Its note is off and split in 2, but it travels far, like a wire pulled through time. 2 bells are better side by side, he says. 1 to call, 1 to remember. By afternoon, a south wind slides along the dock, and the yellow lamp clicks on right when it should. It lays a thin thread of light on the water. Lewis writes small on the edge of a steel plate. Arrive early rather than exactly on time. In the duty booth, a copy of the 5 rules is taped beside the speaking tube. The paper edges dark from the sweat of the person on watch. A habit often touched. The frame pulls back. The board of 5 rules. The lamp, the 2 bells, the double-stitched coat, and the red lines on the dock line up into a sentence without a subject. Habit. Texas City carved 581 names into stone and 1 lesson into the everyday. Clear hazard labels. No steam in a heating hold. Keep distance. Train and evacuate. And above all, the first rule. Smoke that changes color means alarm. When the smoke changes color, do not ask. Act. This is hidden history. Stories once buried but never lost. Follow if you believe history can help save the future.